Good day, everybody. I'm Jussi Kemppainen, and I was the technical director in Angry Birds Tunes. And the show has gathered some 3 billion views so far, so it's a pretty big show. And I'm here to talk about the animation, the character animation tools we created for that show, for the huge amount of work we had. We had to design an animation tool that would allow that kind of work to be done. And my company has been producing Angry Birds animations for a really long time. This is the first one. This was done in 2009. This was commissioned by us by Rovio, this really small Finnish game startup that had no money to pay us for the animation. So we had to go for this really low budget look. We had to do like animated still frames almost, kind of animatic look. And there was no character design. Our graphic artist had to look at the game, these really small games characters on the slingshot and on these structures, to kind of get an idea of the character design. And this is what the characters look like that. And meanwhile, we were doing some more advanced After Effects rigging in other projects that we were working on, these other animation projects. We had inverse kinematics in there, we had separated the controls from the actual artwork, so you didn't have to go in and select a layer. There was this simplified user interface. And we had some automated stuff, like we did this kind of walk cycle automation tool that you could use to animate the character's feet without doing any animation yourself. You just click on a checkbox and it would use mathematics to do this walk cycle. And 2 years later, in 2011, Rovio approached us and said they wanted to buy the company and make it an internal animation studio for Rovio. And that's when we started doing only Angry Birds. And that was when it was time to bring the rigging technology to Angry Birds. And so the first one we did was this close interpretation of the game look. This kind of just do the same character as was in the game. And we pretty soon realized that it's not going to work for lively animation. And then we experimented with another kind of looks. This is the second one. It has most of the features of the final rig that I'm going to present to you, but in a way crude form. And the beaks, for example, were animated by hand on top of the animation that was created in After Effects. So it was really tedious progress, and you couldn't do any changes once you were committed. If the character bounced the wrong way, there was no way for you to go back and change that. And we did some more experiments with other styles, and we did like, I don't know, maybe 7 different kind of variations. And then we realized that we have to do a tool that we can use to produce consistent quality animations, instead of going at this shot-by-shot basis, like creating new settings for each shot. So we formed a separate team for rig development and other kind of technical development. And my colleague Pauli will talk to you about the other tools we created at 3:30 today. And our goal for this rig development was to first come up with a better character design for Angry Birds in general, that it could be used in comic books, marketing, stamps, anywhere. And we wanted to produce like proper model sheets for the characters, like animation studios do. And we wanted a hand-drawn look, a look that would match the backgrounds of the show, so that the background art wouldn't stand out, or the characters wouldn't stand out from the background art. And the way we went about that was that the same artists who do the backgrounds did the characters also, did all the character painting by hand, with the same tools, same brushes in Photoshop. And this is what the final rig looks like at the moment. So this is puppet animation and After Effects. It's not hand-drawn, it's not 3D, it's kind of this like a mix, it's cheating it. And it has emphasis on animator tools and workflow, so we try to make it as easy and polished for the animator to use as possible. And we spent about 4 months in the development of the rig. And here's what the rig looks like for the animator when you open it up in After Effects. There's the toolbox that it houses all the main tools for the animator. And this rig has literally hundreds and hundreds of lines of expressions and hundreds of layers and dozens of pre-comps. And all the stuff that the animator doesn't need to touch is shied away, it's hidden away. So the only tools you can access are the tools that you need to access. And we made it so that when you set all the values to 0, the characters are in the basic position, the base pose. So you wouldn't kind of have to, if you made some mistakes and you wanted to return to the original pose, you just put everything to 0. And I wrote a manual about the rig, a book, 150 pages long manual. It's just crazy thing where everything is detailed, like why this value is 5. I have like a chapter on that. And then this book nobody read. There's like nobody cared about the book. And this is why I like having these presentations, because I can force feed the book on you unsuspecting lot. So here we go. First, the pose tools is the box there, and also the crosshair under the character. And we talk about the crosshairs first. We have the master crosshair and the position tool. And the master tool is used to control the ground plane. Kind of, if you want to put the character on a boat or a car or on top of another character, you would link that animation to the master control. And then you would animate the character animation on top of that. And usually this is just placed in the midpoint of the character's path in scene. So when he's like walking in some distance or something, you put it in the middle to keep the position channels kind of clean. And this is the position tool. You use it to set the character's position relative to the ground plane. So when the character is lifted off the ground, the shadow automatically stays fixed to the ground plane. And when you try to pull the character underground, it won't do it. So you can try, but it doesn't. And this was just done to make the animator's life easier, so they wouldn't have to worry about the ground plane. They wouldn't have to secondary animate the shadow, because that's tedious. And the system also respects curves in the ground. It respects animated ground planes. You can have like a wiggle effect or any kind of distortion effect on the ground plane, and it will adhere to that. And we did it with Puppet tool. We have 3 puppet pins that are following the ground contour. And we made an expression for that. You don't need to memorize it. I have an animation describing the main features. So we check the point, the red point next to the master. We check one point underground. We check if that point is not underground, then the character is so high that we can hide the shadow altogether. But if that point hits the ground, we know that, okay, there is the ground plane is between this point and the character. And then we check one point from the dead center of those points. And if that point is underground, we know, okay, the ground plane is going to be under the green and the red. So we then halve the closest green and the red points all the time that are above and underground until we find the ground plane. And this saves us a lot of processing time, because like brute forcing every pixel down from the bird, it was really, really like CPU expensive. And this also supports overhangs, so you can have a cave or a branch or something. It's like a computer game. You can just put the character anywhere and it'll work. And this feature was something that nobody ever used. Whenever I open up a composition in the animation, the ground plane is just a flat thing. Nobody has ever touched the master control, so those are just not used. But the support is there once somebody gets around to that. Then I'm going to talk about the main animation tool in the box, which is the squash tool. This is kind of the ultimate tool for controlling the bird. And what it does is when you move it up and down, it squashes the bird, and when you move it sideways, it leans. So this allows us to do pretty much all of the animations the bird needs to do with their body. So this basically, we just thought about it as a head rig for another character. So we just let the body off and then did only the head. And we did all the controls that we could possibly need for a head animation. And then the next one is the rotate tool. And the rotate tool is a little more complicated one. This is a tool that we can use to add 3D-ish rotation to the characters, so that they feel that they have volume. And this is based on these 2D layers that are either completely 2D or then offset in 3D space and parented to a null in the center of the bird. And then also we do like part swapping, so we swap the beak and the eyes depending on where the character is faced at, so that we get the proper artwork for each direction. And this doesn't work for slow turns. When you do a really slow turn, when the art swaps from another to another, you have this really crude thing. So when it works better for these slow movements, when you have one main direction and you kind of move in that one. And then I have an explanation of some of the layers that, for example, for the red bird, we have the belly and the spots on the cheeks, and then we have the body, and then we have just mask everything with the body fill, and then we add the eye pre-compositions, and those are really complicated. There's like dozens of layers in there and pre-comps, and then there's the beak, and the beak and the eyes are offset in 3D space, but they are like the beak is facing the camera every time, so there's no kind of perspective movement on that. And all the characters are done in a similar way, but of course they have their own separate pieces. And then we realized we need to add control for the face also, the position and the rotation of the face, because with the lean tool, there's only so much you can do. It always looks kind of mindless. But when we did the face tool, you were able to kind of act more and put more intention into the characters, like the actions, what they are doing and what they're trying to achieve. And then moving on to the pickers. And these are, like the other tools that I described, are tools that you take and you animate them. But these are just selectors that you kind of click on, and then you get in the expression shelf or the filters tray, you get these expression controls. And you can use these to control these subtle expressions in the characters. Like for example, here's the tool for the head flaps. And going into detail how this works, we have a pre-composition with just the 2 head feathers. And we have a 1 master value angle control that is applied differently for each null. And these nulls are parented to, or there's puppet pins that are parented to these nulls in the artwork, so the puppet tool is distorting this one too. And the way that this works is when you move the angle, we have a predetermined angle that the flaps go to. So whenever an animator is doing something, the character will always stay on model, because the animator doesn't control anything individually, but it's all controlled by us in code. And of course there is separate control for all these nulls. You can do special poses for those feathers, but you really seldom need to. And the one cool thing we also did for this is this time offset. So the bigger the value is, the more kind of floppy everything is. So this works for the feathers and everything, all the ears and all of this stuff that are kind of hanging on the characters to add this kind of feeling of physics. So we can make this as big value as possible to make everything really soft and droopy, or we can make it really small value when everything is really rigid. And then we have the color picker, which we like all the artwork for the bird is brought in After Effects black and white. It's black and white and then 50% gray. And we're using the tree tone and tint tools effects to recolor the character, so that when there is a scene where the character needs to be a certain color, we don't need to do that with hue saturation or something like that. We can pick a specific color, and we don't need to go to Photoshop or any other software for that. And then we also wrote a lot of, the BEAK. Okay, so the BEAK one, it was a big problem for our character, because the BEAK was something that we couldn't fake. There was no way for us to do it in the kind of South Park way, that it's just these things flopping about. So we needed to have hand-drawn frames for the BEAK. And the problem was that we didn't know what's going to happen in the animations. We had no idea. So we had to create a BEAK system that would allow the animators to do all kinds of stuff without having previous knowledge of what's going to happen. So we wanted the BEAK to be reusable and something that wouldn't require that much work to do. And what we ended up is this. We have the keyframes on the right-hand side, these key expressions, and then we have the base expression on the far left. And then we do 3 in-betweens for each. So we can animate to each of these expressions from the basic keyframe. So you can change expressions of the bird. And when you combine this so that you go back and forth in these kind of like these pipes, you go into an expression, then you come back a little bit and you change the expression and you go back to the end, you get a feeling that the bird is actually animating from expression to expression, like the animator actually drew the frames from keyframe to keyframe. But it's not. These animations, the keyframe animations were done by different artists in different countries, and they had no knowledge of each other. But by doing, like trying to match everything to the first frame, we can do in-betweens for every kind of BEAK expressions. And then maybe the most complex thing in the character is the eyes, because the eyes need to be completely posable. We need to be able to do every kind of expression, because for a character that is basically a face, the most important thing are the beak and the eyes. And for the eyes, we created this. When you select the pupil, you get all these expression controls, and you have control for everything. You can completely control the eyebrow. You can completely control the pupil size and position, and all the kind of what the eyelids are doing. And in addition to this, because some things you just cannot do with effects, we have like hand-drawn frames for eyes. So you could change the eyes into some really special expression. You could blink them and open them up, and they would be in another expression. And all these special expression frames also work with all the tools that you saw in the previous slide. And the look at targets that we did for the character, we have two. We have one that is relative, and that is something that you can use to animate the character's eyes to make it look around, but it's completely just transferred straight on to the pupils. So the pupils, when the character moves, the pupils stay fixed. They are not looking at anything. They're just staying in the direction that they were put in. And then we have the absolute target, that when you animate that and put that into a position, the character's eyes will stay fixed on that. So when you put this in a place, and you fine-tune the pupils so that you get the perfect, and then you move the character, the eyes stay fixed to the absolute target. And we also have a slider that you can animate freely from the absolute to the relative, so you can have the character eyes fixed in some direction, and then you can animate them fluently, like linearly, to look at some other target that is the other eye target. So you could have a butterfly flying in the sea, and then you get like glance at the butterfly a little bit, and you wouldn't need to worry about where the butterfly is. The character would know where it is and look at that. And then talking about the scripts we had to do, because there are some things that After Effects didn't do for us. We had to write our own tools. Like for example, for this really expression-heavy rig, for the eyes example, the eyes are 7 pre-comps deep. So there's 7 different documents that you can open and have and look at the expressions. And in all these 7 pre-comps, there's like 4 or 5 places where you use, for example, the position of the eyelid. So once you accidentally delete the eyelid control, all the expressions break, and when you hit undo, it doesn't fix it. You have to go manually and plug on all the expressions by hand. And the animators they wouldn't know what to do, because they didn't know about the expressions or anything, because nobody read the documentation. So we made this little tool that you click. Once you made a mistake, you click on it, and it goes through the expressions automatically and puts them on for you. So you wouldn't need to waste time or ask somebody to help. Then what we have is, we made this toggle between high and low quality, because After Effects isn't actually a real-time program. So for the animators to get more real-time, more better feedback on the animation they were doing, you could actually click on the low quality thing, and it would automatically turn off all the shaders on all the layers that would make the character more sluggish. So it was something done to help the animators. And then this is a crazy plugin. We made this pose library for the characters. So when you choose a character, you can have these predetermined poses that you can just click on and apply on the character. And the character would take the position. It would be keyframed. You could block out the whole scene just using these, and it would animate. And then you could also select specific channels and apply a second expression only to those channels. So you could take 2 expressions and mix them. So you would get a completely new expression. And once you were done, you could take this new expression and save it to the pose library. And this applied to everything, not just the characters. We started using this on camera information, everything. You could just select a bunch of channels and save them in the library and load them up later in a scene that had the same channels. And you could do a pose you could load a pose that was done for a different character on a different bird, because all the channels and all the channel namings were the same, so the expressions work on everything. And here's some examples of the rig in action. You can see the animation tools moving, and you can see that the animation, the data is really simple, it's really clean, but the character is doing stuff that looks like that it would be more complicated to do. This one, for example, the character is doing a lot of things, but the tools are just moving just a little bit. And most of the animation, the secondary animations and all of that, it's just automated and nobody has to worry about it. And one thing we also did for the rig that we wanted pretty early on were dynamic lights. We wanted to be able to change the lights and the rim light and everything after the animation was done. And so we could use the same animations in different scenes and in different environments. So we ended up with 3 lights. We have the main light, we have the ambient light, and then we have the fill light. And you can change the intensity, the size of the light, you can change the color of the light and the direction of the light. And you can also pull the light forward in 3D space and push it backwards in 3D space, so you can get a different rim light, or you can change the light into backlight, so the character will be lit from behind. And I'm going to show you how we did this. We have just really simple these textured round balls. We have 2 of them, and they are in additive mode. And then for each bit of graphics, we have this rim layer. And so we mask these 2 light elements with the rim layer, And when everything has this nice brush stroke, no matter where the lights are, it's always going to look hand painted. And here's some examples of these lights in action, how they work, how they like change the scene. The same animation with different lights. And then I'm going to show you an example animation of this rig in action. Okay, thank you everybody. And yeah, that's it from me.